Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Give a golf clap to that like button. We are here. This is your 5-hour Tiger Woods live commentary show here on the Cover 3 podcast.
John Rahm just 4-putted from 40 feet away on the first hole. That's probably not a great sign for him this week.
First hole's a beast. You know, it can be a little difficult. You get off to a rocky start. So, we will give you any updates that distract us here, just being honest. But CBS Sports, CBSSports.com, Masters.com for all of your second screen, third screen, and so forth. This is an episode where we're going to be getting into the big old bag of mail. A great way for you to get a mailbag question in is to leave us a 5-star review, and in that review, put your mailbag question. We are also going to be taking questions from those of you that are hanging out live. We'll be peppering them in throughout the show, so go ahead and drop them. We will grab ones, producer Jordan, on the ones and the twos, helping us out along the way. I'm just going to go ahead and grab one right here. Does Illinois win a conference championship with Caleb Williams? This is a callback to an old conversation that we had here on the show. If you drop Caleb Williams in on this team, are they going to be able to compete for a championship? Tom Fornelli, it's Caleb Williams. If he's on Illinois' roster in 2023, do the Fighting Illini win the Big Ten?
In 2023?
Yes, 2023.
No. But I think they might have won it last year if Caleb Williams had been on the team, because they were very close to beating Michigan to begin with at the end of the regular season, and they probably don't have that kind of, the losing streak at the end of the year. So if they win that Michigan game, they're playing for a Big Ten title against a Michigan team that they beat. Maybe they can do it again. I don't know if they would do it this year, because I expect, and we'll talk to it here shortly, I expect Michigan to be good this year. I expect Ohio State to be good this year. I don't think just adding Caleb Williams to Illinois, especially considering some of the guys that they've lost, suddenly makes them a Big Ten title contender in 2023. No.
I check out.
I don't know that they would win it. They would be the favorite, but they would move up.
They would win the West.
Yes, they would be. Caleb Williams would make Illinois the best team in the West. They would be no worse than fourth in the East. And I think they would probably, if they got the right breaks, compete for the East. Also, if you had to face Caleb Williams and you are Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan, probably not in that order, in the final Big Ten championship game, or what we think will be the final, right? Because divisions are likely to go away, we expect. That's not a fun thing. You do not want to have to face Caleb Williams in a one-game conference championship type setting, so special players, he's really special, man. How much better is what USC had on its roster than what Illinois has? Somewhat better, but
offensively a lot, defensively not at all.
Yeah, I think Illinois had a better defense than USC did, personnel and coaching.
I say no. I don't think it changes. I think it changes a little. It makes them a better team, clearly, but I don't think it helps them to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's a downgrade from Luke Altmaier. That's a no from me, dog. All right. So this past week, and we've had a lot going on. We had the fantastic beginning of the week, the NIL roundtable, to be able to show what should have been the conversations at the congressional hearing. Then, of course, we were able to spin it forward, get a little NFL draft talk, which means we haven't gotten to circle back to a couple of Michigan football headlines. Speaking of the Michigan Wolverines, including a very, very big recruiting pickup in quarterback Jadyn Davis. And they had their spring game over the weekend. Let's do Davis first. So, Bud, when we look at the quarterback class for the 2024 cycle, we have even said on the show that it's Dylan Raiola, and then we got a little bit of a drop. Where is Davis among that next group up? And do you see any more upward momentum in terms of the way he's rated, ranked, or projected?
So it's always possible to move up. It's also possible to move down, right? He's one of those guys right now. He's rated the 28th player in the country for us on 24/7 Sports and the number 2 quarterback. I do think it's Raiola, and then a level drop to Dave, probably Davis leading the top of that tier 2 group. It's still a really good get, right? And this is a player that I think Jim Harbaugh in Michigan had to go out and get, right? He's not a super tall guy, 6'1.5", 200 pounds. Looks like frame wise, he's probably not getting a whole lot bigger unless he gets an unexpected growth spurt. But he's kind of a tactician, a guy who's real accurate, seems to know where to go with the football, very productive at the high school level. I would say the arm is a good arm, not like not a Josh Allen, Nico type arm, but a really strong, or a strong enough arm that you can make all the throws you need to make at the college level. And I say that they had to go out and get a guy like Jadyn Davis because they missed on quarterback in last year's cycle. And I think there was some early panic, perhaps, in the Michigan fan base that they didn't get CJ Carr, right? Like, guys, like, it's Lloyd Carr's grandson. How are we not getting in on this guy? But Jadyn Davis is the dude that I think Michigan had at the top of their board for most of this cycle and last year's cycle. So I think it's a really good get for them. Harbaugh actually has a pretty dang good track record with developing quarterbacks. McCarthy is not an elite quarterback yet, but he's at least solid. Obviously, Andrew Luck was somebody he recruited. And if you're Michigan, you need to be feeling much better about your recruiting now than I think you should have been feeling over the last 2 years. And we kind of ragged on them a little bit, and I don't think we should back down from that, right? They had gone off back-to-back college football playoff appearances, back-to-back, beating Ohio State, including last year in the Horseshoe, and they did not capitalize on the recruiting trail like they should have, right? Classes in the teens, when you are freaking Michigan, is not good enough based on 2 back-to-back college football playoff titles and ending the drought against Ohio State. Now we're starting to see that. They're number 3rd in the country, and it's because of quality, not just quantity. And I'm looking forward to seeing how high they can rise this year.
And also, they're starting to actually have success recruiting in Ohio, which is something that they haven't been able to do at all because of Ohio State. So that is kind of an interesting situation. It also kind of goes to what I was talking about at the end of the season when Ohio State lost to Michigan. He's not on the hot seat, but there are signs that the seat is warming up and could get hot, Ryan Day. But going back to Michigan and Jadyn Davis, like I think it's a huge thing for Michigan to get a 5-star highly rated QB, as you said, just for the vibes off the way the fan base was feeling and the way recruiting was going. I think it's another good sign. I will say, though, I am surprised that this was Michigan's choice. Like, I haven't seen Jadyn Davis play, so I can't speak to that. But just looking at his build, because if you look at the quarterbacks, like you mentioned, that Harbaugh has had in his career at Stanford and into Michigan, like J.J. McCarthy is 6'3", 225? And like Cade McNamara was like 6'3". You look at the dudes he had, like, what's the kid who transferred from Iowa when he first came there?
Jake Rudock.
Jake Rudock. These are all like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" kids. Like Jadyn Davis, you said he's not the biggest kid. He's only about 6 feet tall, 202 pounds. So, like, he doesn't really fit the prototypical old school quarterback mold that Harbaugh tends to have preferred. So I wonder if we are seeing maybe a possible change in the philosophy of what they're going to be trying to do offensively.
I think this is one of the things that's helped him, because if you look at the list of quarterbacks, remember they had like the transfer portal, window where they got Rudock, then they had Wilton Spate. Remember, he was like 6'5", typical John O'Corn. And then Shea Patterson came in, tried to get a little more athletic. He was, all the rage coming for the SEC. And I think that was the start of an attempt to get a more athletic quarterback. But I think even when you looked at the evaluation of McNamara versus J.J. McCarthy, I think McCarthy's running skills jumped out to you more than McNamara. So maybe that's helped Harbaugh to say, look, we don't want the old school 6'5", 240-pound, slow pocket passer. We want to have a quarterback who's a dual threat. And maybe that's what's allowed him to get a quarterback like this. Because I do think it is becoming a prerequisite to be a quarterback, especially at the NFL level, but I think in college even more so, to run RPOs, to move out of the pocket, to make plays when things break down. I mean, look at Caleb Williams and Drake May. It's probably going to go 1-2 next year. Those are athletic quarterbacks. So I think Harbaugh, I think it's intentional that he wants a quarterback to fall in line with that model, that mode of play.
I fundamentally agree with the idea that he's a good, quarterback coach. But, so we go Andrew Luck at Stanford, Colin Kaepernick at the NFL. But I will say that seeing J.J. McCarthy take a leap from 2022 to 2023 would be encouraging, because you just went through that run Jake Rudock, John O'Korn, Shea Patterson, like not guys who started their careers at Michigan. And we haven't seen until JJ McCarthy a true like start at Michigan, finish your career at Michigan, multi-year starter. When Jadyn Davis is committing to the Wolverines, he wants to be signing up to be a multi-year starter, develop, and eventually go to the NFL. And that's not something that Jim Harbaugh has produced yet at Michigan. It's been a lot of these guys that are transfers, quick fix, Shea Patterson for 2 years, John O'Korn here and there. We haven't really had the Jim Harbaugh recruited him, developed him, and turned him into a first-round pick. It's just not something that's happened in Ann Arbor yet under his tenure.
So if you look at the history of Jadyn Davis's ranking, right, in you asked about like the progression. So he was the number 1 rated player all the way back 15 months ago for this class. He's a guy that we've known about for a long time. He was good early. So it is very possible that other guys, as they win the puberty lottery, right, and this thing, everybody kind of matures at different rates, right? And I don't really care if you're good early. I just care how good are you when you get to college and how good are you as you get through college. Then he went to, sort of that 8, 9, 7 range. Just that's not like a grade drop on the guy. The guy's grade is actually increased throughout the process because we don't want to go throw a 98 on a guy, 3 years before he graduates. Started him out kind of as a 93. Now he's in that 98 range. Like that, I think that we're confident in that because of how high his floor is. Right, he's a guy that is very polished. The tools are solid. And to Tom's point about being surprised that they would pick a guy with that body type, I don't disagree based on the historical comps that Harbaugh typically seems to prefer. However, I think part of it is market scarcity of the traditional body types within the region that Michigan's recruiting this year. Now, you might say, hey, Jadyn Davis is from South Carolina and he now plays in North Carolina. That's not really in their region either. And I agree with that, but at least they were able to identify him early and go out of region. Like the other dudes, Julian saying, Bama went out to California to get him. He certainly doesn't have elite physical tools, right? Just a very productive guy. CJ Carr obviously has solid tools. Lagway down in Texas, really elite physical tools. Noland down in Georgia is committing this weekend, big time tools. Croman Hoke, who's committed to Florida State, big time tools. Lagway's committed to Florida, by the way. I don't want to get the hashtag bias accusations. So, and it looks like somebody probably just missed a putt. Was that Tiger or Rom?
That was Rom.
Okay.
On 2. No, nothing. No. I'm dialed. Okay.
All right. Yeah, so I'm carrying the first. I'm doing the first 15 minutes of this show like super locked in. So you guys watch these putts now. Look, I just think Michigan probably surveyed the landscape. Hey, there's not somebody local that we really want. Maybe the Carr thing. Okay, if he wants to go to Notre Dame, that's fine. Who can we go get nationally? They've worked this relationship for a long time. So I think part of it is not necessarily preference, but preference to have at least somebody good who we can establish that relationship with over the long term.
So Michigan's spring game was on Saturday. I will admit that I've not gotten a chance to go back and rewatch it. But Bud, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did we think about the group in 2023? What are the big takeaways? And again, I blame Jim Harbaugh for throwing his spring game on Final Four Saturday. I mean, come on, dog.
Totally agree. Watch. All right. We got a big dude we need to know about, right? 6'4" looking guy, 330-ish, went number 1 overall in the Michigan spring game draft, ahead of all the quarterbacks and everything, apparently. Kenneth Grant. He's a second-year player. I had heard last year when he enrolled that Michigan was extremely excited that they got him into the program, was throwing up some crazy weight room numbers. Our Andrew Ivins on 24/7 Sports. Check out the 24/7 Sports Recruiting Podcast if you're a serious recruit nerd, by the way. That he had him on his freaks list already that they do with the kind of end of the cycle recruits. And basically he was unblockable in spring camp. And that continued just somebody, I mean, the ultimate comp there, I guess, for somebody that big and that strong, just like the Albert Hainsworth comp, like that, to me, like that's one of the best defensive tackle players ever at his peak. His peak was not very long, and Washington Commanders fans will probably be pretty quick to remind you that. So he's a guy to know about for sure. The edge rusher they got from Coastal Carolina, Stewart. Also,
Josiah Stewart.
Yeah, Josiah Stewart basically did the same thing he did at Coastal, which is wreak havoc off the edge. And then a second-year linebacker they got out of Nebraska, this guy named Ernest Hausman. We had him going into the spring as the number 1 graded linebacker in the transfer portal. And I feel pretty good about that, guys. Like he also moved around. Dude has some real juice to him. So the number one takeaway I would say for Michigan spring game for me is increased athleticism and kind of freak factor in that front seven.
Oh man, that's Michigan. It's like Michigan's had a good they lost all that defensive talent going from 21 to 22, and they were still really, really good. And now they've lost a bunch of veterans from 22 to 23. And now you've got Kenneth Grant coming up, and it's gonna be a good defense again, I think.
Yeah. I want to address one thing from the comments.
Sure.
Yeah.
Elks. Yeah, they see Michigan get dudes that Ohio State doesn't even want, and it's instantly, oh my, Michigan is recruiting Ohio better when they actually aren't. Elks, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying Michigan has come in and taking over recruiting in Ohio, but let's not play the game that Ohio State didn't even want that guy when Jordan Marshall, top 100 nationally, running back, had an offer from Ohio State, visited Ohio State, and then chose Michigan. If I had $1 for every fan who told me that we didn't even want that guy anyway after they chose to go somewhere else, I'd be very, very rich right now. They got the recruit. They haven't been doing that at all in recent years. Nobody's saying it's a trend yet. But what I'm saying is that's a good sign for where the recruiting has been. They're landing a 5-star quarterback, and they're getting a highly rated running back from the state of Ohio, from a powerhouse program in Ohio, one that Ohio State has kind of had a tight grip on for years. That's not something that has happened recently until now.
I think that's fair. And like Michigan fans can and should be excited without Ohio State fans needing to be worried.
No. That's not how rivalry works.
Right.
Zero sum.
By the way, we got 150 watching live and we have 17 likes. Guys,
come on.
If that doesn't get up, I'm going to go have my yard guy come back and cut my internet cord again. Let's get those likes up.
Coming up on the other side, the case of Brock Bowers brings about a real reflection. So through college football history, what are some examples of players who came in and as freshmen have immediately been one of the best in the country at their position? We'll get into that and more. Live audience questions from the big old bag of mail next.
Golf's biggest stars descend on Oak Hill for one unforgettable major. The PGA Championship coming in May to CBS.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, opening up the big old bag of mail. You leave us a 5-star review. In that review, you put your question. We will tackle it in a future mailbag episode. So I'm going to start off by saying, this is the question. So I'm going to start off by saying I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so I may be a little biased. LOL. In my opinion, Brock Bowers has been the best player at his position in the country since he was a freshman. Has there been any other players that have come in as freshmen and been the best player at their position that you can remember? He's got some suggestions, but I don't want to cut off our contributions as well. So what names came to mind when considering this sort of like true freshman, hit the ground running, all of a sudden you're at the front of the line in the national landscape?
Can we, before we do that, can we address Bowers? Just how, like, is he in the same class as some of these guys that we're going to discuss? Because he's definitely worthy of the discussion. But like, when you think of dominance, I think it's hard to be a dominant player at tight end. But my goodness, I mean, he's been their offensive MVP for sure 2 years ago, and maybe this year too. I mean, he's been phenomenal. Can
you come up with multiple tight ends that would make All-American teams ahead of Brock Bowers? There's a Matthew Mayer conversation that you could have, but I get where the question is coming from. The idea
for
that
sure he's been awesome
as a true freshman, best tight end in the country, and has maintained that mantle even going into 2023.
I mean, we had Brian on here yesterday talking about the draft, and he was talking about how deep this tight end class is. If Brock Bowers was in the tight end class this year, is he the first tight end taken?
Yes.
I think so too.
I think so, yeah. But there is some chance that he's a better college player than he is an NFL player.
Sure.
But yeah, like I think he's the best college tight end for sure.
So who'd we have as who came to mind?
The most recent one, I went a little bit in the Wayback Machine, but the most recent one, the first one that popped into my head, I thought was obvious, Trevor Lawrence. 2018
title,
wins a title, goes undefeated, throws 3,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, beats Alabama by 28 in the title game, throws for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in the game. Like, come on. That dude showed up as like a perfect rating in our 24/7 composite, goes undefeated and wins a national title, had never lost in high school, right? Like, that was a dude who stepped on the field right away. And you're like, oh, okay, that's the best quarterback in the country right there.
Yeah. To me, like the most famous one and the obvious one is the one that inspired a famous radio call. My God, a freshman, Herschel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like back then, they didn't want to play freshmen, right? There was a pretty strong bias against it, and this dude was just too rocked up, too good, too fast to keep off the field. He famously runs over Bill Bates, the Tennessee safety, and I mean, kind of in the spirit of the question, like was the best running back in the country immediately, and then maintained it. That's really hard to do. Like there are some guys that were like really good as freshmen, maybe not like the best player in the country as a freshman, but in the conversation and then maintained it. But Herschel Walker for sure. There's a couple good ones.
Well, there's a couple running backs too. That was the other thing that was funny when I thought about this. Like Emmitt Smith had 1,300 yards in 87 and obviously continued to be Emmitt Smith. Tony Dorsett at Pitt, phenomenal freshman year, continued to be Tony Dorsett. Interestingly enough, this doesn't meet the qualifications of the question because I went with Claret, but Maurice Claret did not maintain that, right?
Yeah.
Flashed freshman year and then not much after that.
I got a good Emmitt Smith story.
Oh yeah, good Emmitt Smith story.
All right, so Exos, which is a scouting company, like they if you posted stuff on Twitter or whatever, you might have got like a DMCA copyright takedown notice. So they're like a scouting and video company. They got bought or renamed, I'm trying to remember, but to Catapult, so it's now Catapult. But there's a scout that works for him, and guys, I don't know how old he is. Really nice dude. He was Emmitt Smith's high school coach, right? And he up there in Pensacola, and he always tells a story. I do tell the same story every time I see him. I love the guy. Nobody knows more about Florida high school football probably than this guy who's been scouting for, since like the early 90s. Daddy, you may have known this guy. Shoot, his name Bill. This is kind of embarrassing. I forgot his name on the air. Anyway, he's like, yeah, it was kind of funny. I got fired as the offensive coordinator from Pine Forest, and then I actually ended up getting the head coaching job at Escambia. And it's weird, like how much better of a play caller I became when I got this kid named Emmitt Smith. So he was Emmitt's high school coach. He just, kind of.
Hand it off to him. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I am an offensive genius.
Yeah.
I had Adrian Peterson.
Dwight Thomas. Yes. Excuse me. Not
Dwight
Thomas.
Thomas.
Dwight Thomas. Yeah.
I had Adrian Peterson his freshman year. His numbers dropped off somewhat. So I don't know if the dominance was there, but his freshman year, he came on, had 1,900 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And he maintained being one of the best running backs in the country without
For sure.
Yeah. Didn't he have like 100 yards in his very first game? I'm pretty sure he did. Like, it wasn't like a slow start for Adrian Peterson. Like, he just jumped on and it was like long touchdown runs right away.
Adrian Peterson was in the question included Adrian Peterson, Herschel Walker, Randy Moss, and then some two recent ones from a Georgia fan, Derek Stingley.
Not that great as a true freshman.
Yeah, he was
like
good.
Not amazing, good, but like not one of the best in the country. I don't think.
And super recent, and I was pitching Harold Perkins.
He's got to continue it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like if you copy and paste the Arkansas game 12 times over, then yeah, 100%. We're talking in the same conversation as Herschel Walker.
A&M ran right at him and ran over him.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's going to be interesting to see his evolution of how LSU uses Harold Perkins this year. Because like when they had him freed up, he was a beast. Taking on blocks though, in the run game, that's an area to improve. I will give you one at a position that's hard to dominate as a freshman. And I never saw this guy play because I wasn't born. Hugh Green. Hugh Green ends up being like one of the absolute best defensive ends of all time. Freshman year in 77, opens it up. 11 tackles, 2 sacks, and blocks a punt in a 19-9 loss to the Irish. And then he has 92 tackles, 12 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles in 1977 to be second team All-America as a true freshman, which is pretty cool. Here's another one for you. Danny, you remember this guy. Marvin Jones.
Shade Tree.
Yep.
This was just one that, like, if you were in the state of Florida, and I was 5 years old, 90, so like I don't remember this personally, but just like anybody who was around back then will tell you, like, of the guys who probably could have played, not started in the NFL, but like physically ready for the NFL as like guys to skip college, John Madden always said DJ Williams, the linebacker that played for Miami and played for like a million years for the Broncos. Marvin Jones,
old CBS Sports HQ DJ.
I don't know if he ever did.
Yeah.
Remember Danny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My former teammate on the Broncos, DJ.
Yeah, like, but that was Madden's guy, him and Bo Jackson. But like Marvin Jones, I wonder if he's in that conversation too.
Marvin Jones was with me when I was a freshman. I was already kind of scared. Like, I had played at a really small school, Christian school, 1A. We didn't see that many players the caliber of Marvin Jones. I was terrified of that dude. And yet, you know what? He was like the nicest, chill guy. Maybe it was shade tree because there was this tree at the practice field, in the middle of the practice field, and it was like shade. That's where, until Marvin Jones, every time there was a break, anytime they're like before practice, he would be just sitting against the tree, just in the shade, just hanging, just chilling. And that's where he got the nickname. Coach Bowden started calling him Shade Tree. But my goodness, he could absolutely wreck dudes. I mean, he was so intimidating.
I know you went small private school, but like, I would say nobody in Miami public school saw a dude like that.
Right.
Like that's just not. He had 133 tackles as a true freshman.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
This is a question from somebody watching live at youtube.com/cover3. This is sort of along the same lines. Which Power 5 team will have the most freshmen playing in 2023?
I wasn't done with my freshman yet.
It's a great question.
I've got two.
Tom, go with your freshman. I'll think about this question.
Oh, okay. A guy who kind of changed the program. 1996, Ron Dane showed up at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was not really what it is yet. Ran for 2,103 yards. Like, they went to the Rose Bowl in 93, but the 2 years after that, before Dane showed up, Wisconsin was like 11-10, and they had a couple of ties. He shows up, rushes for over 2,000 yards as a freshman, and Wisconsin's been like that kind of impact team ever since. It's been winning every year. And then another guy who doesn't count, but would have had he had a coach who allowed him to play, because as we were talking about, this was a time when freshmen typically weren't allowed to play just because they were freshmen. LeVar Arrington, had he played as a freshman, would have been the best linebacker in the country, but he had to sit on the bench because Joe Paterno didn't play freshman.
Got a recent one as well. Sammy Watkins. 82 catches, 1,290 yards.
Yeah.
There's only been 4 first-team All-American true freshmen ever. He's one of them.
That's what we're going for, Dabo. Trying to get that 2011 vibe back. All right, trying to jumpstart that offense.
That's 2 Clemson players we mentioned. Huh.
Bud, two thoughts on the true freshman, but I don't know what the rest of it looks like. It feels very top heavy. But Miami could have 2 true freshmen starting on the offensive line, and I don't know what the rest of that recruiting class is going to look like. And then Texas could have a starting running back, maybe 1 starting wide receiver, and maybe a linebacker. Texas and Miami were the 2 that I thought, because I don't know how we define the most freshmen playing, whether you're starting, whether you're rotational, but those are 2 that came to mind for at least the high end. I don't know what the middle of that class looks like in terms of instant impact contributors.
No, they have some guys on defense who could contribute to it at Miami. So I think, Chip, the Miami was the one I was going to go with as far as teams that are going to play a lot of freshmen. I would also like Miami's private. So staying in that vein, I think the probably sneaky answer to this is schools that are with newer or new-ish coaches at private school locations who, because they can't take a lot of portal kids, had to take a big high school class and know that they have some job security, that they can play these young guys and get them some reps and let them take their licks. So, like, I wonder, like, is Vanderbilt going to play a lot of freshmen this year? Is Stanford going to play a lot of freshmen? Northwestern is not a new coach, but obviously he would be, one potentially to look at there.
Here's one. What about Colorado?
USC?
Ooh.
They're so transfer heavy, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they've got Cormani McClain, who's probably could be starting. He's a 5-star. And
Running
they've got
back
a bunch-
Edwards could
yeah, they
could
a
start.
couple
Yeah.
4-star receivers who could be seeing. They could have like 4 or 5 true freshman starters on that team.
Oh, Chip, speaking of transfers to Colorado, obviously they got Sean Lewis to come over from OC from Kent State head coach to Colorado OC. Apparently Devontae Walker is killing it for your Tar Heels so far in spring. The receiver from Kent State, that's good. You guys lose Green Downs, right? So
yeah, and first of all, it has been alleged too many times, both here on this show and in the big old bag of mail, that Chip's a North Carolina hater. Remember? Big time hater.
You do hate North Carolina.
Our group chat says different, but
Yeah.
okay.
The wide receiver from Georgia Tech's pretty good. Wide receiver from Kent State's pretty good. They're still working on building out that order, but I have heard it's gonna be catching passes from Drake May. Come on.
Yeah.
That's
Just drops him right in his hand perfectly.
come on. He's got perfect ball placement. All right, this was a question that has been around for a while, a classic Lindsey Buckingham. And so I want to be sure to get it back because we put it in the headline for last week's mailbag. We never got to the question, and Pitt fans were furious. He said, "We saw our name. It was there. You didn't mention it." So the question, which has been, bopping around for a little bit, is that if the ACC falls apart, like if we're in a conference realignment situation where the Big Ten comes to get a chunk and the SEC comes to get a chunk, the question is, what is Pitt's future if the ACC falls apart? Where does Pitt fit into the landscape of the future of college football? Because I do not think that the identity of this program is one that is like, Bud, you have mentioned a like Northeast sort of conglomerate, schools that are not going to want to, play keep up with what's happening in the Big Ten and the SEC. I think Pitt would want to play keep up. I think that school and that program are invested enough in being a part of college football at the highest level that if you gave them a road between, a take the check, take the losses situation and, relegating themselves to now competing against Boston College, Syracuse, Villanova, Delaware, I think Pitt would rather be playing at the highest level, but I don't know where they would fit in that.
I mean, do you think they would go more like the American then?
Why not Big 12? Big 12 will take them.
Big 12 would give West Virginia a dance partner.
Yeah, and it's got Cincinnati.
Louisville. So, Scott Satterfield could play his former team.
Yeah, Big 12 would be a good fit.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if the ACC dies,
there's going to be a lot of teams get scooped up.
Yeah, like is the SEC and the Big Ten absorbing everybody and just becoming 2 super leagues at that point? Because I think Pitt would have a home if that's the case.
You do. So, like, I guess it depends, like, because there's been different cutoffs where you've said the 2 super leagues, how many teams have access to those? Is it 32? Is it 40? Is it 60? Like, how big is it? That's when I think it gets interesting. And I'd put Pitt in a similar, you guys tell me if I'm crazy on this one, similar spot to like Oklahoma State, who's in a tough spot now because Oklahoma, Texas leave. They're like a good option, but I don't think they're a great option for another conference. So they're kind of there. Now they've got a better landing spot because they're in the Big 12. I mean, I guess that's where I'd say but I don't know if they're in the Super League, depending on how exclusive the Super League is.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's not, then I can see the Big 12 makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think Pitt would have a home. I don't know what the landscape's going to actually look like in this scenario where the ACC breaks apart. Like, it's like, well, maybe they'll land in a Power 5 conference. Well, what the hell will a Power 5 conference even mean at that point? Well, they land in one of the 2, I think, is what matters. And I think they would have a shot. It's just, I don't know. Like, if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, how big do you want to get? How much of the pie do you want to share? Like, if the ACC dies and the Big 12 dies and the Pac-12 dies, okay, we've already got 16 teams. Do we want to go past 20? Would we be happy with 20 apiece? Do we want to go to 24? I don't know.
I don't think the ACC is going to die for the record.
No, it's
But
already dying, Chip. We've already talked about this.
I'm willing to, because I care so much about our listeners, I'm willing to at least entertain the hypothetical, but I think it benefits college football. Like there may be schools that decide not to play by whatever new rules happen in the future of college football. I think it benefits college football to either have it be like one league or to have multiple conferences. Not too bloated, not two 24-team conferences.
I will say, like, when the expansion was first starting, Pitt was a school I wanted in the Big Ten just because I thought it made plenty of sense as a natural rival for Penn State. Like, to me, that made more sense than Rutgers did, but I understand the TV market was why Rutgers was ever chosen over Pitt.
Speaking of our loyal viewers and listeners, this next question comes from Ryan. Hey guys, day one listener and always love the pod and the great banter. Hope you can bring back an all-time great off-season topic soon. What?
So he was listening. It was you, me, and Jerry?
An Eye on College Football podcast, circa 2012 listener, Ryan.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Hope you can bring back an all-time great off-season topic soon. Which head coach and starting quarterback duo would you pick to win a fight? I'm a Gator fan, but I think Billy Napier is too nice, and I have no idea on Graham Mertz or Jack Miller. If memory serves, an incredible Barton quote was, while picking Tom Herman and Sam Ehlinger for the quarterback coach fight tag team, he was picking Tom Herman and Sam Ehlinger because, quote, Sam looks like he's taking a cheap shot for running his mouth too much. Keep up the great work, Ryan.
That is actually part of Barton's scouting process. Can this guy take a punch? Mario and Tyler Van Dyke have to have, like, they're in the tournament, right?
Yes.
I think they're in the tournament. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but they're like, so I had those two, but I also had Luke Fickell and Tanner Mordecai, but Mordecai's not
Mordecai.
as big as
I mean, yeah.
Fickell was that's where you're going with the coach aspect to it.
Like Luke's gonna have to carry a lot of that load.
I mean, I know he's a former quarterback, but Joe Milton, I mean, I don't know if any quarterbacks are taking him down.
I think he can probably throw a punch.
You know, like
100 miles an hour, yeah.
But what value do you lose with Heupel? I mean, is he former quarterback? I mean, he has bulked up though. I don't know. I don't know if he could last many rounds.
I mean,
like Sean Lewis is an OC now, so we can't use him.
Yeah, he doesn't count.
He was always a competitor in the Coach Royal Rumble because of his size.
Did you see Heartline said he would take down any coordinator in the country?
Did he? Where did he say that?
He was on with Bussin' with the Boys. And he's like, I'll take on any other coordinator in the country. I'll kick their butt. Like, I'll mop the floor. He was talking all kind of trash from a receiver. Come on. I mean,
we think Peyton Thorne can fight?
I mean, yeah.
Mel Tucker is pretty yoked up. I mean, he could, like, I would not really want to fight Mel Tucker and Peyton Thorne.
Oh, I know who fights dirty. Father-son combo. Mike Gundy, Gunner Gundy.
Oh, okay.
What are the terms of this scrap? Because if it's dirty fighting allowed, the father-son duo might be tough to take out.
Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising is a good suggestion. And so this is just becoming which coach would beat up the other coaches.
Right.
Like we're just tossing quarterbacks in there with them because they're all 6'2", 210 pounds.
Can Jonathan
there's
Smith
no like
scrap?
Jared Lorenzen, like a massive quarterback out there. That's
like
why I said Milton.
DJU at Oregon State.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
like him and Jonathan Smith. No,
too nice.
Okay, yeah.
No, but when the nice guy gets mad,
that's right.
That's a storm you don't want to have to weather right there.
The fight might be over. We know it's a slow developing anger, just like the plays in the offense. It takes a while to really get everything going.
Here, the punch just here it comes.
John at Troy is pretty jacked. I don't know who his quarterback is.
Who his starting quarterback is going to be?
It might be Watson. Not really scared of Gunnar Watson.
So because of the, do do you think they would be able to hang in the fight? Like as you mentioned, we've got a lot of quarterbacks that kind of look the same. We're not doing a lot of plus value, but Bo Nix has seen some things. My question's about Dan Lanning. We think Dan Lanning can get in there and scrap?
I think he could. Yeah.
Youth plays in, like, there's some younger coaches. That's the avenue you're going.
Oh, you know who's probably a pretty good guy that's probably pretty good in this? Mississippi State, Arnett.
Yeah.
I bet you he can scrap a little bit.
Good suggestion.
I don't know about the QB.
Good suggestion from the chat here from Lebo Sports Podcast. Will Howard and Chris Kleiman. Yeah. Will Howard's a very large man. Chris Kleiman's a large man. That'd be a dangerous combo.
That checks out. All right, let's do another one. Oh, man, whatever. Let's do it. Russell Cochran asks, is a fish in the water considered wet? I believe if you take the fish out of the water, then it is considered wet.
It's wet.
It's wet.
It's wet.
In the water. Anything that has water on it is wet, whether you're in it or out of it.
Yep.
I like that.
Just like my jumper. It's wet. Do you so I wanted to get this in there because I saw this yesterday. Do you guys know we've gotten to the bottom of who said that the Georgia Bulldogs were going to be 7-5?
No.
Because I was going to put out there, like, I'll give anybody $1,000 if they, I was going to just say, find me the quote. Some other ones out there I've been trying to do that with too, but I don't want to get in trouble. But so the Nolan Smith was doing a podcast with Saturday Down South, the guys from Saturday Down South, and they put him on the spot, said, hey, where'd that come from? And you know what he said? I made it up. He admitted it. He's like, I made it up. And he was like, wait, where'd it come from? He's like, I looked at it. He's like, Kirby's worst year was 8-4. So I went under that and figured 7-5 would be the most disrespectful thing we could say. And so we went with it. But like after the game, those guys didn't know that Nolan Smith had made it up. Like they thought it was legitimate. Stetson Bennett's getting into it with like reporters after you guys doubted us all game. Nolan Smith, to me, MVP for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Good leader.
They believed it. I mean, they believed it. So, yeah, we've gotten to the bottom of it. It was made up all along.
I got something to add to that, actually.
Okay.
Pull up Nolan Smith's Twitter, right, which is Smith Nolan D2.
Mm-hmm.
His pinned tweet is too small, not strong enough. He needs a lot of improvement. I will never forget these words. That's 2017. Nolan Smith was the #1 rated recruit in the country. Like, I wonder if Nolan Smith actually makes stuff up like this for motivation and then convinces himself that it's real.
Hey,
like not just for the teammates. Like,
that's,
do you leave that up as a
MJ
pinned
level.
tweet?
That's
I took that personally.
Yeah, that's Michael Jordan like DNA right there. I mean, I used to up my draft board. I want more of that in the locker room.
That is the one thing. Like Nolan Smith, just locker room leader for sure. And then, like, I remember during the combine they were interviewing him, and I was like, oh my god, this guy will be after the NFL. He's going to be in a studio for sure.
I'm gonna start just ripping into my daughters. Everyone thinks you suck. You hear that? You're not even getting into college. What are we talking about?
You gotta make like fake TikTok commenter accounts. Be like, lame, 30-inch box jump.
Yeah.
Your mom told me she doesn't think you're going to make this putt.
Right? So yeah, that's where I'll go from. I'll blame it on my wife.
Oh, man. All right, coming up on the other side, what schools/programs have not capitalized on the NIL era as much as we may have expected? Plus, more of your questions next.
Get breaking news,
big news coming out of the NFL today.
highlights, and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in Ford championship history. We're down to the final four.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Next question from the big old bag of mail. Question. Obviously, the NIL era is still very young. However, which schools are you surprised haven't had more success in this particular era, and why do you think it is? Second part of the question, great pod as always, and I was curious, I know it's been a bit, but with the offseason here, any Cover 3 book ideas, either college football related or in general. So first, let's do the NIL part of this. Schools that have not been able to capitalize on the era as much as you may have thought.
Oh, as you thought?
Yeah, like heading into it when NIL became the law of the land, and we thought that teams X, Y, and Z were going to be able to benefit the most from this. And who are the ones that haven't quite fallen through with that?
I got 4.
Nice.
There's an easy one that came to the forefront, and I know people are going to say, oh, you're a Florida State guy, but I mean, Florida has not capitalized in any way you thought. I mean, they had people that were at the forefront of it. It was in a state that was aggressive with it. They had the Gator Collective. They promoted it. And then not only have they not capitalized on it, but it's been a disaster so far.
Yeah. That's the number one with a bullet, right?
Yeah.
Like we can say, so we could say some have underachieved, but they haven't like publicly blown up like that. So I'll kind of lump these two together, Michigan and Notre Dame, right? Like Notre Dame's in on some of these guys, and their fans on message boards whine that like, oh, this school dropped an NIL bag on them. This school dropped an NIL bag on them. Like, guys,
you can too.
It's legal. Do it. Stop being so cheap or so ivory tower, right? Like, stop hating the idea of players getting paid, Notre Dame. Like, maybe Bama and those teams are more in favor of players' rights. Maybe they like players more than you guys do. So I would say those two schools for sure. South Carolina, because I think of the way that they were organizing it, had some real momentum, and then the NCAA had some clarifications. And I do think South Carolina is going to come back in a big way with NIL, but I think that their NIL success got delayed a little bit because of perhaps a misreading of the market in terms of the extent to which schools were allowed to run things. There were some like clarifications issued over the summer that I think maybe delayed them slightly.
Any others?
I mean, like there are some where I feel like they haven't had the improvement that a lot of people thought NIL will fix, but I don't think it's been the NIL. I think it's just been.
Was it with like, is Nebraska a part of that? Like, yeah. We think
like
that
I think Nebraska's been pretty okay with the money. It's just we'll see how Matt Rule's able to do with it compared to the last regime.
And like,
Jordan, can you share this on screen?
Well, and like Miami went 5-7, but the recruiting success suggests that it is working as well as you thought that it was going to work for Miami in the NIL era. Yep.
Whoever has screen share access, maybe I do. Do I? Yeah, I do actually. Let me.
If I open up another tab, YouTube.com will close. Okay.
I'll share this real quick here. Can I share a tab? Can you add that tab to the screen?
Oh yeah, I saw this story. This is interesting too. Really interesting.
Yeah.
What?
That's John Ruiz's company, and that's the value. That's where it's currently traded. It was it at $10 when it went public, the IPO. So he was, talking about his net worth at the time, and it has absolutely plummeted. So Darren Ravel's got a couple articles on this on the Action Network. He's kind of been the one that's been all over this. Wouldn't you say that, Bud, or have a lot of people?
Yeah.
Can you voice, Bud? Can you explain what people are looking at right now for those on the audio side?
Yeah, that's the company that like very prominent booster / NIL guy John Ruiz owns. So
that's at what 65.
They also announced that they would cancel and reschedule their fourth quarter and full year 2022 earnings release. So
they had projected earnings of the year for like 200 million, and the first quarter came in at 3 million. I think that's why they wanted to change those numbers and wait on reporting them.
So how fast has this? So you said it opened at the IPO is at 10, and thank you, Tom. It's trading now at 65 cents. So has this drop been recent?
Oh, yeah. Let me.
You can look at the year chart.
Is this not showing up? Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's 5 days. That's last month.
Click on the 1 year.
So does that mean like Okinola is going to be in trouble? We're not going to get these payments out to these 5-star freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like Jim Cramer. Sell. Or is it time to buy?
I don't know what'll happen.
I don't know.
It's interesting to follow.
It is.
Like,
that's the fun of the stock market. It's no different than betting on sports. You have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
I feel like I have more control over betting on sports than
Yes, I would
401k.
agree. Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. This question comes from Chad. With conference scheduling changing due to realignment, which teams do you think will be the first to play each other 3 times in one season? Of course, we are coming in the wake of Alabama and Georgia playing for the SEC championship and the national championship. This suggestion from Chad, who are going to play each other in the regular season, the conference championships, and in the playoffs?
Ohio State and Michigan will be the first ones to do it.
I think that's an easy one. I think Bama, Georgia wouldn't be a bad option. I think if Florida State can continue to progress, I think Florida State, Clemson is one that, if you would have said this 6 or 7 years ago when Clemson was coming up, I think that one would have been.
Those are the 3, I think.
I think Alabama LSU is more likely than Alabama Georgia because we believe Alabama LSU will be a protected rivalry. Like there will be years when Alabama and Georgia will not play each other in the regular season. Alabama and LSU will play each other. Clemson and Florida State will play each other. Those definitely come up as well as in terms of being regular season opponents, could compete for the conference championship. And then of course, if 2 teams are playing for the conference championship and they are the programs we are talking about, they're making it to the playoffs.
And that's the thing. Like Ohio State, Michigan will play each other 3 times within a month.
That'll be ridiculous.
Because they will play the final game of the regular season, the Big Ten championship, and then like the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, throw it on the record. Principal under in the 3rd meeting in a single season. Rock fights.
A new trend.
Yes.
Did the 3rd meetings trend towards the underdog or the favorite? Let's find out.
It is 3-0-1 since the expansion of the college football playoff that the under has smashed. All right. Jate says, which transfer quarterback will have the best season in the Big Ten next year? Will it be Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin, Hudson Card at Purdue, again, Luke Altmaier
at Illinois,
or somebody else?
But those are good. Go ahead, Tom.
I would lean Hudson Card if I'm going to take the homer hat off. I would lean because I just think that team, Purdue, Hudson Card, I think is a very good player. I'm skeptical on Tanner Mordecai. I just am. Like, I understand why he was brought in because of his familiarity with the offense, but if you look at his numbers at SMU against Power 5 teams, they are nowhere near as good as his numbers were against the American and other G5 schools.
But that being said, he's also got 72 touchdowns and 20-something interceptions. Like, he's got massive numbers. And you do, like, I think when you're playing against some of that better competition, you have less competition around you. Like, you have a disadvantage where Wisconsin, I don't think that disadvantage will be as big when he's playing against other Big Ten teams. Does that make sense?
SMU is going to have a receiver drafted this year. Wisconsin won't.
True.
I think it's probably Mordecai, actually. I think the talent around him is better than what they have at Purdue. And I just think the guy's more proven. I understand the Hudson Card love, but I'm going to go with Mordecai, man. I think that's probably going to work. But I could be wrong. That offense seems to score points everywhere it goes.
The Phil Longo offense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but will Mordecai be the star or will Braylon Allen be the star?
It's fair. Fair question.
Graham Harrell, Phil Longo, a couple hot OCs that are they still hot? Right? You just kind of they'll get a good chance to prove themselves.
Barry
there.
Lundy is the hot OC. Just let's be clear.
Let's be very clear about that. Thank you. And I do not want to leave the listeners and the questioner hanging. Book recommendations. What have you been reading, or what are you excited to read now that we get into the summertime?
I just finished a book that has absolutely nothing to do with football.
That's cool.
My Thoughts Be Bloody. It is about the sibling rivalry between John Wilkes Booth and his brother Edwin Booth, who was a much more successful actor at the time. That kind of played a key role in what John Wilkes Booth ended up doing. It's a very, very interesting book.
That sounds good.
I've been reading Good Night construction site, which is pretty solid. Everybody works together really well in that one. Like you got to use all the tools. You got a steamroller, got to flatten it out, and then the crane trucks got to help out. Reading Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. I got Maggie, my wife, the book The Long Ships. So she likes like Vikings and stuff like that, and she said it's actually really good. So probably read that after. She's like, you need to read some nonfiction. I'm like, all right, cool. Or some fiction, rather.
Some good nonfiction too.
I read this not too long ago.
That's on my list. Did you like it? Because I bought it.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I should probably say that The Last Folk Hero, The Life and Myth of Bo Jackson by Jeff Pearlman. If you like Bo Jackson, you'll like the book, because it's informative, but it's also not, like a lot of biographies when you read them, like especially sports biographies, they're very lionizing. This one gives you Bo Jackson, like the person, not just the myth.
Does it have sorry, go ahead. Like some of the folk hero stuff from when he was a kid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it mentions it, but it mostly focuses on what life actually was.
I'll go Atomic Habits.
Stop your
Atomic Habits. James Clear. That's next to my book. Sorry, Chip, to interrupt you. I got.
Oh no, I was just going to start reciting a Good Night construction site.
Oh, there you go. I was more of a Good Night mood.
You know it too, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
100%. And there's also like Good Night construction site Christmas. Like, you've got the themes at it. You can build out it's like Little Blue Truck. You've got like a whole collection.
Demolition, which is a strange choice for like right before bed. They have Good Night Demolition.
Mm-hmm.
It's another good one for college football fans. It's called
Scoreboard Baby, a story of college football crime and complicity.
Yep, it is about Rick Neuheisel's tenure at Washington, which had a lot of the same kind of stories that we're still dealing with in college football programs today. Not good stuff.
Interesting. Well, we appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. Continue to throw in those questions. We will take note of them, throw them in the big old bag of mail. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
Oh,